The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Welcome to Eye at Oshkosh. Cheryl, Hentz, and Dan Rylance here, and we're very pleased to be bringing you another show with two candidates running for the Oshkosh Common Council. Joining us in this first half is Steve Cummings, and in the second half of the show will be Brian Poeschl, both again running for City Council. And there are 7 candidates on the ballot. There will be, as a result of those 7 candidates, a primary coming up on Tuesday, February 16th. The general election is on Tuesday, April 6th, and in the primary, the race will be narrowed down to 6, so one will be eliminated. There are 3 seats that folks are trying to win here. So welcome. Thanks for coming out on a winter snowstormy night. And
I got here just when it stopped snowing. So.
Braving the elements, so we appreciate that.
We live in Wisconsin.
That's right. We appreciate your being here, like I said, and you, of course, ran last year.
Yes.
Unsuccessfully, but you're throwing your hat back in the ring again. For folks who maybe don't know who you are or who have moved to the city since last year, why don't you tell us and them a little bit about who Steve Cummings is and why you're running for Oshkosh Common Council?
As you said, my name is Steve Cummings. I've been a resident of Oshkosh my entire life, as has my wife. We're both 5th generation Oshkoshians. Our son is the 6th. My background is primarily business. I spent almost 20 years with a Fortune 500 company in marketing and product management and advertising. That would have been Mercury and Fond du Lac. From there I bought a company in Oshkosh, ran that for a number of years, and it got to a point it was very difficult to properly compensate employees, find good employees in a small company. I decided to close that and spent the usual year, what shall I do when I grow up? And my timing has always been great. I entered real estate just as the market started to slide. So that's sort of my business. My background has been all business, handling big budgets, working with a wide number of different clients. The reason I ran last year and I'm running again this year, the city of Oshkosh has been good to our family over, since the 1850s. We've been very active in the community. I thought it was time that, I give back to the community. I think we all should. If it's your church or your kid's school, volunteering your time, I think we all have that obligation to give back to our community, and I chose the City Council. Having lived here all my life, I've seen things that could have been done better, should be done better. It's a great place to live and work. It could be better. And I feel an obligation, secondly, to all the people who supported me last year in my race. Well over 4,000 people voted for me, so I assume they thought I was heading in the right direction. So those are some of the reasons I'm doing this, but it's really, I think I have the business background I have is something that the city could use. I look at a city as, it is a business. I mean, the budget here is $65 million, give or take. I think you have to have people on the council who understand those type of dollars, who understand that, be it state government or city government, It is a business, and the taxpayer is the customer. We have to have some value for our dollar. And I think part of that is, I don't think as a taxpayer, we deserve to have streets that are rubble. We don't deserve to have water in our basements, sewage in our basements, land that sits or undeveloped that should be developed, such as the riverfront. So I would approach this as more of it is a business, pure and simple.
All right.
It's a business.
You talked about giving back to the community,
Right.
and when you were here last year, Steve, we talked a little bit about any boards or commissions with
Right.
the city that you had served on, and at that time anyway, I think you said that you had not. Now, since then, have you applied for any boards or commissions, and if so, why not?
I have not applied for any boards or commissions. I was on the steering committee with the Oshkosh Foundation, which I forgot to mention last year, for the Neighbor Works program.
Okay.
Over the years, I've done a lot of, when I had an advertising agency, I did a lot of marketing work, prepared marketing communications materials for the Payne Arts Center, the museum, the symphony, Mercy Medical Center, Boys and Girls Club, Humane Society. So that was my contribution from that standpoint, producing those type of materials on a pro bono basis. I'm a member of the Oshkosh, or the Winnebago County Historical Society. Some past work, I've been a past regional chair of Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. So I've been fairly active in different areas, but I thought I could use my expertise in the marketing, advertising, preparing materials for these people, probably better than sitting on some boards.
Sure. Of course, on the other hand, I guess, by serving on a board or commission that is within the city confines, if you will, it gives you a little bit better working knowledge of how the city operates. But you didn't feel that it was necessary to do that, or?
At present, no, I didn't at the time. No.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fair enough.
And again, I was, in the past life, if you will, I was doing a tremendous amount of traveling too, so
Sure.
I was probably gone half the year.
Sure.
So it
Just one little follow-up.
Sure, yeah,
Are
go
you a
ahead.
member of the Chamber of Commerce in Oshkosh?
was through First Weber Group, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. Well, many issues are facing the Oshkosh Common Council. It seems like there's more tough issues facing them this year and in coming years than when you were here last year. And I didn't know that that was possible, but alas, it is. One thing that's not a huge issue, but it is a controversial one, and that's about the deer killing, or culling, as it's more appropriately called, I guess. We're hearing about, as we tape this, we're hearing about a culling effort that took place just before the end of the year and just before Urban Wildlife Specialist's contract expired. The two previous cullings or killings, notification was given to the city, in particular to the neighbors in the area. This time no notification was given. That has Councilman Palmieri, Deputy Mayor Palmieri, very upset. He's even this afternoon blogged about, he's now accusing the city of being in violation of a city code that prohibits the discharge of firearms in the city. He's got a lot to say about that on his blog, Talk to Tony, and I'm sure that in particular will be part of his discussion Tuesday night at the January 12th council meeting. But if in fact the group and the city was in violation of its own city code by these sharpshooters being in the city firing high-powered rifles or whatever they were shooting, what do you feel should be done? And do you feel that there was a problem with no notification being given?
Well, I thought we put the deer issue to bed last year, but apparently it's going to
I thought we did.
rear its ugly antlers again. I think the goal and the objective is to cull the herd. And the city council gave the city manager the go-ahead to do that, which they did. I think the previous culling attempts were dismal failures. I think there was enough protesters there. I've heard things of tainting the food. So, to me the objective is cull the herd, period. And I think finding a fawn there dead, probably starved to death. Is that going to happen to more of the deer? I don't know how to answer your question about violating any city ordinance because I haven't seen it.
More specifically, They gave an exemption to the sharpshooters last time they did culling,
Okay.
that they could shoot within the city limits, a special
Right.
permit to do that. Evidently, Paul Marius found out that that was not renewed this time around. So it's a technical
Yeah.
thing.
Okay.
So that, I think, knowing that you don't know about that, but that
Right. Yeah.
that was the sum and substance of his issue on that one.
Well, and to take that one step further, I think he's saying that had ample notice, had any notice been given that this was going to be taking place, it would have triggered something in his mind and perhaps others that, hey, this exemption had not been given. The steps would have all been taken, perhaps, to do this right. If this did in fact fall through the cracks, how should it be handled, do you think?
Assuming it fell through the cracks, that's a tough answer. It did fall, apparently, if in fact there was an ordinance violation and it fell through the cracks, who's to blame? I don't know. They were executed, the council said, go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm.
They were following council direction.
You don't have a problem with the no notification this time around?
No.
I don't either.
I think, who do I tell you and not Dan?
You can
because
if you
Dan
want.
lives, Dan lives a block away, so do I not tell Dan, but I tell Cheryl? And then once
tell
I tell, once I tell 2 or 3 people, it starts to spread, and we're back in the same thing. We're the protesters, and if the objective is, which I understand, to cull the herd.
Right. Which was pretty successful this time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the objective. And if this is some gamesmanship and some that don't want the herd culled, let's just follow what the council agreed to. Cull the herd.
And it could have been more successful this time around, in part because of no notification, but it also could have been a hard winter is upon us, whereas the other times when they were out there, we didn't have snow on the ground like we have now. There could be any number of reasons for it. But
absolutely.
anyway, that certainly is not the most pressing, albeit one of the more controversial issues before the council. What do you see as some of the more pressing issues that this Common Council is going to have to deal with?
I think the basics have to be addressed. And I said that before, the streets, the sewer, the water, the basics. I think the visioning study that was done last year, I think that has to be moved forward. I don't think you can invest that type of money and time and bring a community together and just let it drop. So I think the big things we're talking about in the visioning was bike trails, riverfront development, power poles. I've talked with the people from the public service, and removing power poles is not that easy.
That's very costly as
It's
well.
enormously, and not just the public service uses it, but cable, and 4 or 5 people have their stuff hanging from those lines. It would be great to have done. I think if it takes 25 years or 35 years, then let's develop a plan that says this is the long-range plan. The goal is the line's gone at some point, but there's a cost to everyone involved, homeowners, the city, the public service, other entities. And in talking with them, there are ways to maybe obscure those power lines initially through the planting of certain types of trees. That would at least soften it, especially like a 9th Avenue. It would somewhat soften the approach by just having some trees. But I think it has to be if it's 50 years, all right, that's the goal. In 50 years, I'll be dead, we'll all be dead, but the poles will be gone. Because we're dealing with older neighborhoods, and they have much different issues than newer developments. So
I would like my street fixed before we put the power line underneath the ground.
Well, I'm on the corner of Frankfort and Bayshore, and Frankfort looks like Berlin after the war. And the one thing we joke about at home is when they sweep the streets at night, they go down Frankfort, you can hear the hunks of street going into the sweeper. Like, why are you sweeping the street?
Yeah, because the cold mix doesn't last very long.
It doesn't last, no. And from the standpoint of both the streets repaired and the issue of power lines, I mean, it will overall increase the value of your homes, which may affect your taxes a bit, but it also affects your net worth. It increases that. At the time to sell, you can get more for your home. In real estate, I find it very difficult to show people homes on streets like a Frankfurt. Number one, they look at the street and they kind of wonder. There's no curb. The first assumption is at some point there will be an assessment. And we can't really answer the question when. But overall, it will increase the value of the homes. But again, the streets are one issue, and this whole power pole is, I think, a very long-term issue.
The parking lot where Kingcliff Auto is, there's been some talk in recent weeks in particular as we tape this about using some of the accumulated TIF money to purchase that and develop that as a parking lot.
Right.
The city should buy it. That's the proposal that is out there. I guess two questions about that. Number one, would you agree with that concept of the city buying the land and turning it into a parking lot? And two, is it a good idea because our former community development director Jackson Kinney is involved in this?
Well, what is his involvement in it?
Well, I don't know specifically what his involvement is, but I know that the former city manager, Bill Free, who is, proposing this, has floated Jackson's name as being the one who could, I guess, write up the TIF agreement, if you will, or the TIF whatever. And given that was one of the issues that so many people in this community had with him, the way he sort of really pushed TIFs constantly instead of trying to find other development tools. There's a school of thought out there that says this is not a good idea.
Well, is a parking lot needed? I mean, it's a parking lot now. It's not really used, I don't think. Is the parking lot needed, first of all? And secondly, is there the business in that section to support a parking lot? And if there is not sufficient business, will a parking lot bring more business into that section of downtown?
Okay.
I know with the main business there is the Roxy, and on busy nights there are cars parked pretty much all over.
Hard to find a parking spot on a Friday night around the Roxy. And they have indicated they might be supportive of some money or some, but certainly the Roxy needs more space.
They need more space, and it probably would bring more business into that area, which we need.
Should the fact that Mr. Kinney is involved in this to whatever degree he's involved, should any involvement in this be kind of a sign to kind of approach this with caution, do you think?
I would think so.
Okay.
You mentioned in your introductory remarks about flooded basements, and I guess the long-term plan for that is this stormwater management program.
Right.
Are you familiar with it at all?
Yep.
Why isn't it the city comprehensive plan?
Pardon?
Why isn't the management program project in the city comprehensive plan? It's not in there.
That I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not. If it isn't, it should be. I mean, it's
a
major cost issue, millions of dollars.
What's your thought on the proposed pump station where the water will go into Menominee Park and into Millers Bay?
Well, that's $1 million more than on Nevada Street.
Okay. Clearly, the residents in Nevada Street would prefer the pump station in the park, right?
Yeah.
But what about the water going into Millers Bay? Issue?
Yeah. I mean, we're spending a lot of money now to get that bay cleaned up.
Right. Are you a member of the Outer Street Fishing Club?
No.
Oh. I would think they would have concern about this.
No.
No. Okay. No. It is sort of a sacrosanct bay, and we know the big problem we had with the pier here a couple of years ago, and so someone's saying, "Oh, we're just going to pump all this water into Millers Bay." I would think interested people would be concerned about that.
Well, we've spent years stopping water going into the lake from
Right.
every source imaginable, and now we're kind of turning around and
Right.
saying, let's pump this in.
Yeah.
But there's $1 million difference. Is there a compromise?
Yeah, good point. There's another proposal out there, and I don't know whether you're familiar with, is to combine county and city health departments. Are you aware of that at all?
Yes.
And do you have any thoughts on that?
I think you should.
Okay. Yeah.
I think we should. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
Any potential problems that you see with combining the efforts?
I guess the only problem I would foresee is with any merger, there'll be people who will feel
Yeah.
jeopardized, but that's a personnel issue. But if it's a cost savings, look at the city, how it's grown into the county. I mean, well, the thing that really surprised me doing nomination papers, how many people I know that do not live in the city of Oshkosh. In the town of Algoma, town of Black Wolf. There are many people who prefer to live in those areas, not Oshkosh, but yet it's still considered Oshkosh, and it takes over more of the county. Yeah, it makes sense to combine that stuff.
Okay, all right. One of the biggest challenges, as we've kind of talked about here a little bit, Steve, is the budget. Areas in the budget that you see perhaps needing some cutting, some tweaking, what might they be?
Well, again, I have not seen the budget, but my background has always been with a budget. You whack the money into three categories. One is the expenses that you can't get without. There's that gray area where you've got some latitude with what you spend, and then you've got those that are very discretionary. And that, to me, to look at the budget, going through it that way, then you start, all right, where would you put this expense in which category? And that, I think, gives you a realistic way to find places fairly easily to cut.
Okay.
You think there's a lot of fat in the city budget?
There's fat in every budget.
Okay.
I'm not dodging the question, but
Yeah. No, I think
there's
that's
fat in every single budget.
Okay. The
At home, too.
The 2.1% increase was pretty minimal for, wasn't it, for this year? I mean, it wasn't anything outlandish.
You know, as you look at them, you've got your mandatory expenses and then your discretionary.
Yeah.
It's just a way to fine tune a budget. It's amazing how fast you can pull money out.
Yeah.
Okay. We keep hearing things, and we have for several years now, about wants versus needs.
Right.
Well, that's fine and well. I've used that expression myself. But, you know, what is a want for some person is a need for someone else, and vice versa. In a time of tough economic times and ever-shrinking budgets, you know, how do we balance those wants versus needs, and how do we determine what truly is a want and what's a need when different people have different things? And how do we take the visioning study and incorporate some of those things into our city plans, and yet still do things like stormwater management, road repair, that kind of thing?
Well, I would think, you know, the need category are those things that are mandatory. Fire protection, police protection, decent streets, stormwater, sewage, those type of things. And you have to look at a budget as I think, very long range. You know, times are very tough right now, but it's not going to last. It never does. We just don't know when it's going to turn, but it will turn. I think what we do now, we companies, individual, you plan for the future, knowing that in 2011 or 12 or whatever, it's going to start doing that. So what we start planning for today will start happening. The groundwork has been laid now.
Okay.
Am I making sense with
Yes.
that?
Yep.
You know, too often people look at a budget or a plan as it's an accounting 12 months, when in fact it's a living, breathing document that as the year progresses, it does change. And it should be a rolling, to me, a plan should be a rolling 12-month, or it's just constantly ongoing, and it's constantly being modified, changed, updated. Things that don't work, you remove. You've got places for opportunities, that type of thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you saying at our last interview last year that you thought renovation of downtown was a dead horse. Did you say that?
No.
You didn't say that? Oh, well, I'm getting older then. But you,
We all are. By at least a year.
Well, were you negative that you thought that that was not a good investment?
I think my position was it has to define itself. What does it want to be?
Mm-hmm. Is there hope for downtown?
I think so, yeah. Being an East Sider, I'd like to see, thank God for Kitts and File.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I think there is. I think it's all part of the community's mix. You've got the historic downtowns. You've got an art center. You've got the Grand Opera House. You've got parks. You've got ball diamonds. You've got the frontage road, the box stores. It's all part of the mix, and I think you just can't treat one as an orphan.
Okay.
But I think, once it's got to really define what it's going to be. We'll never have department stores down there again, nor should we try. What I would like to see happen, and I've been fortunate because I did a lot of traveling. There are some cities comparable to Oshkosh that have really made huge turnarounds. One of which is Dubuque, Iowa. I always thought Dubuque is where they made hams. I mean, there's a Smithsonian museum there now. IBM has moved like 1,000 people there from, I think, Connecticut. The riverfront, we've got a riverfront, we have a lake. You go into a bar and the young bartenders are as enthusiastic about the redevelopment as anybody. They work for the Chamber of Commerce. What I'm getting at is I think people on the council, City Hall, should get in their car or on a plane and look at some of these cities firsthand, talk to the people that have made these things happen.
There's a fire engine they could take to go to other cities.
Okay. That is not a need. That is
there.
not a need.
Excuse me.
But there are some cities that have done marvelous jobs, and you really have to see them firsthand. Kick the tires, and I don't think that's been done.
I've been in Dubuque. Don't they have a street you can't drive on down?
They might have.
Yeah. You think that's a good idea for Main Street? Some of the other cities. Don't a lot of cities have an area where you...
Minneapolis has closed off a lot of stuff. I would say yes if there's an easy way to get around Main Street if you're going north or south.
Well, we got a new parking lot behind now. They could park and walk on the street.
I would see no big objection to closing Main Street. But again, there's got to be an easy way to go north and south.
Okay. We're down to like less than a minute, Steve. Why don't you take about 30 seconds and just look into camera 3. Tell folks why they should vote for you on February 16th.
Okay. Well, I have a sincere interest in contributing to this community, my home. I bring a lot to the table, a strong business background, a marketing background. I think we spend too much time kind of downing different parts of the city. I think this is a great city. We have to build on our strengths and move forward. And I think part of that building is a tremendous amount of planning. And I bring that background, I bring that discipline to it. I know the city intimately, and I've got a strong vision for the future.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Thank you much. If
Thank
you
you.
make it through the primary,
Thanks
we're
for
going to have you
showing. Good luck
back
to you.
Thank you.
before the general election.
Cheryl,
So,
enjoyed it
thanks
again.
much. Just sit tight. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Brian Poeschl, another Oshkosh Common Council candidate. We'll be right back.
Just want to take that thing off.
Right.
Dear Mom and Dad, well, I finally have some time off, so I'm writing to tell you that I'm doing well. We have good days and bad days over here. We try to remember the good ones and get through the bad ones. Mostly we have each other, and that's what keeps us going. And Mom, since you asked, if anyone wants to help, just tell them to contact the USO. You can't believe how much they do for us. With love, your son, Michael.
Every year, the U.S. Department of the Treasury receives about 1.4 million reports of problems with paper checks. Checks can be lost, stolen, or delayed. If you still receive Social Security payments by paper check, Treasury wants you to know about a safer, more convenient way to get your money. The Direct Express Prepaid Debit MasterCard. The Direct Express card is new and is available to anyone receiving Social Security benefits, even if you don't have a bank account. Your monthly benefits will be automatically placed onto your card account each month on the day your money is due. While other debit cards cost money, it is possible to use the Direct Express card for free to make purchases, pay bills, and get cash at thousands of locations nationwide. There are no sign-up or monthly account fees, no more waiting for the mail, or worrying about lost or stolen checks. Call 1-877-212-9991 or visit www.usdirectexpress.com.
We were in an emergency situation. We don't have extra. We have a little bit of water and a little bit of food. A meeting place, no.
No.
I don't think we have a first aid kit.
We have tuna fish, we have
Right.
beans, we have canned tomatoes,
True.
you know.
That's true, but that's really not survival food. Tomato paste.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh, and we're joined now by Brian Poeschl. Brian used to serve on the Oshkosh Common Council. He's been away for, I don't know, how many years have you been away from the council now, Brian?
Almost 5. It'll be
Okay.
5 years in April.
And you, correct me if I'm wrong here, you ran unsuccessfully a couple years ago, or was that last year?
No, just back in 2005.
Okay, so it was a few years ago. And then you wanted to, you were trying to help fill the vacancy last year.
Right.
After Paul Esslinger's seat was vacated once he became mayor. That didn't happen.
Right.
In fact, you were out of town when the presentations were made to the Common Council. So now you're throwing your hat back in the ring. So
Sure.
why?
I just still think there's a chance for, as I say, a better Oshkosh of so many different things out there, and I see changes in City Hall in the past few years and hopefully getting better and people wanting to come to City Hall to find things out, but there's still different changes out there, and I think there's a lot more still can be better for the common person that's out there compared to big business and big people.
Okay, well, so share with us, you know, some viewers, I mean, the population changes. Some viewers may not be familiar with you. So, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've lived in Oshkosh all my life. I'll be 50 years in February, and I've always seen a lot of things come and go. I see traffic, different situations change, and I just see where in Oshkosh people a lot of times are afraid to make that change, as far as maybe one-way streets to two-way sometime in our lives, different traffic patterns in town. I ride the bus every day, 12 months of the year, and people out there think that, you know, if you ride the bus, you're just not a common folk, and I ask those people to ride the bus. You see different things happening with the change of signs in town, change of businesses. You look at the Main Street upcoming next year with the change in Main Street, and hoping still is to get downtown back to be a downtown again that I know started back in 2000, 2001 with the redevelopment of downtown Oshkosh, and hopefully this new street will make things happen and get people back to what Oshkosh was years ago.
Okay. Well, obviously, the city's changed a lot since you've been on the council. The complexion of the council itself has changed, and yet, by the same token, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And so, if you took a look at the council makeup as we have it today, in 2009, 2010, who would you say, what members would you most identify with from a political standpoint?
I would say, as was even before, Mr. Palmieri, as far as always asking the questions, not being a rubber stamper, as I said years ago, that when I was on the council, you got that the blue book of what was happening on Tuesday night. There was very seldom a no situation. It was just that was going to happen, and you knew it. And I would say with Mr. Palmieri, I think Mr. Buckholz has done a great job also, that he asks a lot of great questions. I would familiar myself with him, and I haven't talked to him personally, but since he did get that spot, I would say he's done a pretty good job in asking a lot of the common person questions that when I sit at home and watch the show, I have a pretty good clue of what's going on compared to sometimes you're just like, what are they talking about? And of course, as far as the mayor, Mr. Esslinger, has a lot of good questions. Always asks the questions for, as I say, the common person out there that just works their 40-hour-a-week job in Oshkosh, is happy living here, and likes the culture of life we have, but likes it to always get better.
Okay. So those would be the ones that you most identify with. Okay. All right.
Yeah. A genealogy question. You probably ask this all the time. Are you related to Bobby Poeschl, who currently serves on the Common Council?
I might be,
might
but
be.
as far as I know, I don't think so.
Okay. So if you were related, it would be
I'll
way
say
back.
9th, 10th cousin if it goes
Okay.
that far.
Okay. I mean, it is the same last name.
Right.
Have you been asked that before? No?
Many times.
Oh, well, then, all right. Okay. Okay, now a little tougher question. I took your candidacy for the Esslinger seat as not a very serious effort on your part. There may have been extenuating circumstances, but you missed the interview. If I'm a voter, I'm thinking, gee, Brian wasn't really serious this time. How do we know you're serious this time?
Well, I would have loved to have been here for the interview, but when you pay for a flight and a vacation to bowl in a national bowling tournament for 7 days, that was pretty tough to cancel that when I was disappointed that it was a quick 2-week turnaround and you had to be there.
Okay.
And I asked for counselor's support, and I know before I mailed in everything, I was told by Mr. Palmieri and by Mr. Esslinger to, even though you're not going to be here, send it in anyway to show that you are concerned and to be involved. And I can tell you that as far as I had the information on my phone in Las Vegas at midnight that night to see what even happened about it. So,
were you? I guess you weren't there, obviously. But what did you think of the process?
I was surprised. I thought it was going to be a little longer, strenuous process when I read about it in the paper the next day or so, that it seemed a pretty quick, but as far as not a lot of interviewing questions that I thought was going to be a big interview situation. And
it really wasn't at all.
No, it's pretty much from what I read. They presented their case.
No questions were asked at all.
They presented their case, and they went through and voted it out and went down to 2 or 3 and it was over with.
Yeah, and the fact that he got it on the first ballot, I thought fell off my chair. I thought this was going to be a midnight round at least, and it wasn't at all.
I thought there were a lot of good people in it as far as at that time. When I wasn't here, I had 3 or 4 names in my mind, and as far as was surprised when I heard the answer was that quick.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Well, but not just the process itself, but do you think that, the next council that is seated in a few months needs to develop a formal process and put it in writing so that, because as you well know, Brian, they sort of floundered around for a while trying to figure out what they were going to do, how they were going to fill that seat. Did a lot of time pass while that process of them trying to figure out the process did that happen? No. A lot of time didn't pass, but there was a lot of discussion and some question marks. Is it time that we have a formal process?
Oh, I think it is, and I thought after that happened that they would have stepped forward and tried to make a process happen. I just watched the school board meeting from last week when they had their process, and I think they pretty much have something set in stone from what they did.
It's part of their policy.
It's part of their policy, and I thought that after this happened, because now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mayor Esslinger's term will be up next year, I believe.
Yes.
So as far as depending what happens there, it could be a situation if another board member runs again, or council member runs the same thing again, that I thought they would have, after they went through the process, I thought it would have been the first thing on their plates of, okay, we did this once, let's make sure we get it correct, so when it comes again that we can just go boom, boom, boom and say this is how it's done.
Do you think that that's a problem that's sort of inherent with not just this currently seated council, but past councils as well, Brian, because, for years we've been trying to, I think, figure out a gift policy for this community. Supposedly that's being worked on, but other things sort of keep taking precedence over that. I know there for some time there was discussion about who around parks should be notified of developments in parks. We still don't have anything concrete on that.
Activities thing?
Yeah, donations being made to the city, as we said. How soon before something gets voted on does it or should it be on the council agenda? None of these things, they're all talked about. They all create huge levels of controversy at the time they're going on, and you would think that a council at some point would learn, and yet that is one of my biggest frustrations with this community and the people who serve, is they're not learning from these situations. If you were elected to this council, would you, make a strident effort to get some of these things done?
I would like to say yes, because I'd like to see some of the things done. I have the same issue as you do, where I think that they make a lot of controversy happen over stuff that might be near the end of the council meeting to get people fired up about it, but then you don't hear about it. And then when it comes, I look to the future. The few of my examples that I have is they make a controversy where the 400 parking lot. I remember when that wasn't going to happen because we didn't have the money, and who was going to pay it and everything. And all of a sudden the meeting comes and they got the room, a lot of people at the room, and we got the money from this and that, so it passed, and you got people all up riled about it. I look at the same situation for the Grand Opera House that I was all in support of and watched that meeting at home for 4 or 5 hours, and they needed $1 million. And 2 weeks later, as far as when I say they don't look for the future, look at that day, the city saved $1 million on the pond at Tippler Park because the state needed the dirt and the mud for the highway overpass. Right. And then after that, there was one more thing. The next 2 weeks that we saved another $500,000 on. But each time that issue came up, it was a big hubbub of these councilors or mayors say we're not going to support it. We're going to support it. Get the public all riled up. Get people in City Hall chambers for 2, 3, 4 hours. And when it comes then, as far as it's pretty much a 6-1 or 7-0 vote, and it's over with, and where'd all of a sudden it come from? And so I agree with they get people riled up a lot about it, and sometimes I think they just do that to keep controversy in the city, but I'd like to see some things happen that, compared to, like I know you said with the donation thing or the different, the gift probably that they're working on.
Yeah, we had the Angel, we had the fishing pier, we had the fire truck most recently.
Right, and even at the last council meeting when they asked the city attorney about the donation thing, whatever, well, it's on my plate, the thing to do, but it's going to be a while before it's done. That as far as to me, it sometimes makes me wonder, well, what are they doing that as far as it's just going to be further and further for people to be able to do stuff?
You were on the council before, so I just want to ask a couple questions about your time and present. What's your response to the changes in city government since you've been off the council? And second, were council members' statements overused as much as they are now when you were on the council? It's almost a separate agenda, and the public cannot comment on their comments. What would be your response to those two questions?
First, there's been a lot of change on the council, and as far as with city government, as you say, I think as far as some of the things I've seen the city manager, Mr. Olaf, do, I think he's done a pretty good job in his first year with the city. I like the one thing that I always like is whenever you either come here to talk with him, which I've been a few times after hours because I came here to get my stuff after hours and that, and talked to him once or twice. And when you hear him on TV, he likes to make it known so everybody understands it. And I do like that part about him. I think the assistant city manager from the personnel did a good job when he filled in.
He did.
He made you know what was going on. And I think that's one thing that the more people know, the easier it is to understand those things. And I think there's a lot of good people in City Hall as far as I like coming in or just seeing the people that are still here, and there's been changes though. And as far as your second question, I'm sorry?
So the overuse or the...
Oh, the council member statements.
Yeah.
Back when I was on the council member statements, which I don't think probably followed the law at that time of the situation, but they're pretty much used to, Ms. Maddox would give you an update of what was coming up in the city.
Right.
They would congratulate people, I'm a member of the Oshkosh West Girls City Championship team, or this team, or this band, or just anything that you had, or or to promote something.
Right.
And now it's like that. I know when I sit home, you get to the city council's member statements, and you're right, it's like another meeting.
It's another hour.
Well, usually that, and it's a lot of questions, and I don't know how the rules work, but I'm surprised now that back when I was on the council, you only had 1 or 2 chances to speak when you came to that part. Okay. And now I've seen some of the council members speak 3 and 4 times in that portion. You're right, it's another hour.
It's an agenda item.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right. Deer culling, we're hearing a lot about that again because there was a culling that took place just before the year's end. Deputy Mayor Palmieri is very upset about the fact that there was no notification this time around. And I guess, the deer population is going to continue to be an issue no matter what side of the fence you're on. it's going to be an issue, whether there's 2 deer or 200 deer. So how do you feel about the fact that there was no notification this last time around? And, you know, if you get on the council, what should be done in the future?
Well, I was pretty shocked when I heard the first thing, or either read it online or whatever, that there was the culling this past weekend or the New Year's weekend, and read the articles of how we had the approval before January 1st of 2010 to do this, whatever. And as far as, I'm kind of on the back side of that area where I live now, and I didn't know what was going on, but I'm not that close to it. I still go by a couple of things I say, and my big question is, I've watched all the deal of people come to the council about do something with the deer population and do something with this. And I'm not for it, because I would like to first know, for all those people that come and want something done to get rid of the deer, I would like to be able to check, and I haven't done the research of when they moved into those houses, because those deer have been there for years upon years, forever. It's almost the same as far as if something goes on in the city of Oshkosh and enough people make a big to-do about it, it changes. My example is one of the best city softball ballparks in this city, over on the corner of 9th and Sawyer Street. Why does not much happen there now? Because the people in the neighborhood made sure there were no home runs hit over the ballparks anymore to ruin their houses or their windows or stuff. And they complained enough that all you have out there now is girls slow pitch and co-ed slow pitch, and as far as there's nobody there. And as far as the same thing with the deer have been there forever. And I just like to know that if the deer were there before those people bought their houses and stuff, they would have known that, because the deer I know have been a quarry for at least 40 of my 50 years or so that I've been around here. And I still think there's other things to be done instead of shooting them. I'm not for it.
Okay. And should there have been some notification then?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. All right.
I mean, there's so many children all over the place in that side of town. You just don't know. Adults and children, not just children. Adults too.
The parking lot, well, the proposed parking lot where King Clift Auto currently is. 2 things. Number 1, you know, do we need another parking lot downtown? And number 2, this is something that has our former community development director, Jackson Kinney, involved. You know, large degree or small degree, he's involved in this potentially. Should that be a reason for us to be concerned about that? And secondly, do we need another parking lot downtown?
We may not need a parking lot right now downtown, but as Main Street gets done next year, might be possibly more business and better business down there. With what they did with the 400 block, I think was a pretty good job, even though a lot of people were against that to begin with. But as far as, I'd like to see something else built there of development better than that. And if I wasn't aware Mr. Kinney was involved, but if he is, I would like to see some different type of business situation, that there was other people involved besides him, because many things have happened throughout City Hall in the past years, even when I was on the council, that it was brought in the back doors, I'll say, that it always happened somehow.
Well, and you know, and we don't know to what degree his involvement may be. It was just Bill Free, our former city manager, you know, mentioned that you know, Mr. Kinney could write up the TIF agreement here. So maybe that was just an off-the-cuff comment of his. Maybe there's something actually serious about it. We don't know. But okay, so you feel that if that is a serious situation, then we need to
let's make sure
kind
we
of look at that.
Cross all our T's and dot everything to make sure it's not just a...
Oshkosh Corp is really the economic engine of this city, more so with the recent contracts. Yet there's been some complaints from neighbors about dust and other things of all of the vehicles that they made. Do you think that's a legitimate complaint, or do you think they ought to just put up and realize that this, without Oshkosh Corp in the city, this city would be in deep economic trouble?
Well, I have a couple different opinions. One is, you're right. If Oshkosh Truck or Oshkosh Corporation wasn't here, I have a lot of friends that do work there, and many other people that they are the main industry in this city. I mean, I look back years ago when it was the Payne Lumber and those things before the condos that were built. But to me, I think we got to work together. I mean, I know the people have a valid point. I won't want to be where they are right now with what I've heard about the trucks all day and all night long, and not having a social lifestyle because it's going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I believe Oshkosh Corporation can do something also to help more, as far as I've always said, which you look at the $1 million contracts that they've had. as I always say, to make millions, you got to spend some too. And to me, without them going to, as far as there's room in the industrial parks to maybe build parking lots for these trucks. There's other places that, and as far as I'm not saying now that also because they got to do this, that somebody's going to make a ton of money from them buying something either. That let's do it as a normal business person. If it was you or I working with City of Oshkosh, that we have an equal term, and work with these people out there too. That, you know, as far as I know, they said they clean the road once a day, and it's not even that good for their houses and stuff and that. But I just say, as anything else, we have to work together. Those people have a valid complaint. Oshkosh Corporation employs the majority of this city's people, pays a good wage, and there's going to be more and more vehicles. I don't think you're seeing the bottom of it yet, and even ones on the river. As far as, you know, as far as pretty soon, I hope that Oshkosh and Waterside doesn't change to a truck on the water. But
oh, that's a good one.
All right. You know, Brian, you served on the council in the past, and you've seen the budget. I don't know how closely you've followed the budget hearings and deliberations since you've not been on the council, but you know, Steve Cummings, who was on just before you, I know that you didn't hear his interview, but he said there's fat in every budget. Do you think that there is fat in the city budget, and if so, where do you suspect it is, and what should we do about it?
I only watch bits and pieces of the budget shows that were there. I always, even when I was on the council, I still believe there's fat in it, and as far as when you try cutting it, they still come up with other areas that needs the money. I still say that as far as there's somewhere, and even I know they tried to start sooner, but it just didn't seem like it still happened. It was trying to start sooner on down the road than coming to September and October of different areas. That it may not be liked for everyone, but get out the brass tacks and let's get down to the numbers compared to, as I still fat in every department. That, and then at the end of the year it comes up where when I watch the council on TV and they ask about, I remember back the deal with the person with the filtration system in the terrace, and they settled that with the person because it had to be stopped because of all the lines of the cables and everything, that he couldn't do that watering part out in West Haven, I think it was, in his terrace. And they settled it as far as and said, well, you know, we got money somewhere we'll vote from. Well, then you got extra money somewhere that as far as you're going to be able to do those things, that it should have been worked another way that save the money for the taxpayers that do it.
This particular council has been accused by, I think, a fair amount of people in the community of micromanaging things that the city is doing. Do you think that city staff is being micromanaged by this council?
Definitely. As far as, I try to keep track of a lot of things that happen in the city by different areas, and it seems that as far as, to me, when you have Mr. Roloff as a city manager, that they kind of go past him and try to get the layer of management below him or whatever and work on them. And I just think that more questions should be asked to Mr. Roloff, and as far as get the answers compared to, it's usually, oh, is so-and-so in the crowd or so-and-so, and as far as it's, I think he needs to come up with more of the answers than always getting, as I'll say, punting off to this director, that director, that director. I mean, that's what he's the manager of, and I believe that they go under management of even sometimes below the next level sometimes.
Okay, but I guess, you know, I don't want to speak for Mr. Roloff, but I guess, you know, who better to speak to some of these issues and answer some of the questions than the department head or staff person who is directly handling those things. But, I mean, as far as the council itself, do you think that they are, you know, really putting the city manager and some of the department heads' decisions under too much of a microscope? Should they give them a little bit more credit for being the professionals and knowing what they're doing? Do we need as much microscopic management as some are saying we have?
I think that there should be, as far as more credibility, more trust given to the people who do those jobs. And you're right, I mean, they sometimes nitpick more, that when I sit there and do watch them, it's like, boy, I don't know if I'd want to do that job or not, because it's, no matter what answer you say, sometimes it's not going to be the correct answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How about streets and flooded basements? I'm sure there were bad streets when you were on, but now the issue of flooded basements is really up. What do you know anything about the stormwater management thing and where we're going with that?
I followed through on it a lot. As far as, I had a flooded basement a few years ago, too, like other people did, but as far as work through it, and I see a lot of things happening with that, and I just think that there's another issue that they're trying to work through it with the different ponds and different things, and it's still another one of those issues that more and more education or know-how or nowhere to the residents, that as far as to make them happy that this is the right thing to do, and not just that we're doing it because Oshkosh has a water problem, but trying to help the residents so that you don't have these problems. And it's another thing, like I say, the city's done well, I think, with the education of the single stream recycling. It came on fast, but I thought they did a pretty good job. I think stormwater is an ongoing education of each thing that happens so people know more about it.
What confuses me is every 3 or 4 months in the council, they come up with a new one that the council members don't seem to be aware of. It's not on any comprehensive list. It's not there, and they keep springing these new surprises on them, like, well, gee, the last one was now they want a pump station over in the park.
Right.
That doesn't seem...
No, and I remember back when I was on the council that, which I don't know if the map is still there, but there was 17 things on the list Mr. Potek brought up for the stormwater sewer projects. And I thought that was a 5 or 6 year plan. And somewhere along the wayside, that 17 step did not keep following through. I remember part of it had to do with South Park, even doing something with the lagoons and everything, which I know a lot of that hasn't happened. And so that's the part too where all of a sudden you're right, it's new things. But if I had this 17 step plan from back in 03 or 04, that 5 or 6 years I think kind of went, and you're right, all of a sudden there's another water problem, so we got to fix that here and got to fix that there.
Real quickly, Brian, on the subject of stormwater management, there were some people in the community this last year who were outraged about the fact that money was used to go toward the renovation of the Grand Opera House, as opposed to spending it on stormwater management and fixing streets so that their homes weren't flooded. I think we need a healthy balance in the community. What would you, if you were on the council, say to folks like that who have that mindset?
Well, again, I would like to try to work with them as far as, find out what you can about the object of the stormwater and the Grand, and bring them on the table and let them know about each one, where they're going, so they're not left in the dark. And as far as that, okay, the Grand, this to me is a landmark of Oshkosh, you needed that. But as you say, a lot of the people with the stormwater issues, that they were, as I'll say, left in the dark. And I just say the open communication again of tell them what's going to happen in their project that you can see 6 months or a year out, compared to, as I said before, today and not tomorrow.
Okay. Take about 30 seconds, maybe even a little less, and look into camera 3 and tell folks why they should vote for you next month.
Well, I ask anyone out there to vote again for myself, Brian Poeschl, resident of Oshkosh for almost 50 years now, and looking for a better Oshkosh. I keep a good place to live, keep everything social, cultural, business-wise, anything that the common person would like. That's what I'm there for, and be willing to answer any of your questions and try to get you answers. So I ask for your vote on February 16th in the primary.
All right, very good. Thanks so much. We appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
And we'll try and have you back again if you make it through the primary.
Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.